Pete Hegseth is always finding new ways to embarrass himself and embarrass the rest of us. He is uniquely unqualified and out of control in this administration, and his latest outburst just goes to show how true that is. With a scandal that erupted earlier this week, causing a screaming meltdown out of the Pentagon. We're going to get into it all and the disaster that Pete Hegseth is. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button because it goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, before we can get into this screaming meltdown, I want to start with a bit of a throwback to when Pete Hegseth showed his complete hypocrisy around the very issue we are dealing with right now of Donald Trump's takeover in D.C., because it goes to show how hypocritical he is in a scandal that's emerging and had him melting down.
Maybe let me ask the question this way so that you can assuage people's concerns that there is a double standard. The National Guard was deployed here on January 6th, and that was a decision made by the Department of Defense. Do you support that decision? Do you believe that that was the right decision to deploy the National Guard to defend the Capitol on January 6th?
All I know is it's the right decision to be deploying the National Guard in Los Angeles to defend ICE agents who deserve to be defended in the execution of their jobs.
But I think it's important to know whether you think it was also important to have the National Guard defending the United States Capitol when there were violent protesters here on the president's behalf, to make sure that folks know that you care about protest, whether it's against the president or on behalf of the president.
Senator, I was in the Washington, D.C. National Guard when that happened and was initially ordered to go guard the inauguration of Joe Biden. But because of the politicization of the Biden administration, my orders were revoked. And ultimately, because of the politics that were being played inside the Defense Department by the previous administration.
But do you support the decision made on January 6th to send the National Guard here to defend the Capitol?
I support the decision that President Trump made and requesting the National Guard that was denied.
So you do not.
President Trump
do not support the decision.
Pete Hegseth was never deploying troops, never, I want to call it nationalized, but weaponizing the National Guard. It's weaponizing the National Guard out of concerns with safety, out of concerns with bringing order, keeping people protected, reducing harm in LA or DC. No. Pete Hegseth is pulling political stunts for Donald Trump because he knows he has screwed up, he has created scandals, he's gone behind his back so many times that whenever he can put on a show for Trump, whenever he can do a little razzle-dazzle, he has to. He wants to win his approval. This administration isn't about whether or not you can succeed, but whether or not you can, I was going to say, but it's whether you can be loyal to Donald Trump. I think you know the S phrase that I was saying there. But that's what Pete Hegseth wants to show off for Donald Trump, and he did with the post he made last week that started this whole scandal off.
Well, the Pentagon is now clarifying that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth does believe women should have the right to vote. This comes after he reposted my Situation Room special report about Christian nationalism that came out last week. I spoke with Pastor Doug Wilson and his pastors in his network called the Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches. I spoke with them out in Moscow, Idaho. That is where the community is based, but they have churches all over the world. And Hegseth is one of their most prominent followers. Of course, he is in the president's cabinet right now. Here's part of my report.
Women are the kind of people that people come out of.
So you just think they're meant to have babies? That's it. They're just a vessel.
No, it doesn't take any talent to simply reproduce biologically. The wife and mother, who is the chief executive of the home, is entrusted with 3 or 4 or 5 eternal souls.
Wilson says in his vision of a Christian society, women as individuals shouldn't be able to vote. His fellow pastors, Jared Longshore and Toby Sumter, agree.
In my ideal society, we would vote as households.
Oh, thank God. The Pentagon clearing up that Pete Hegseth thinks that women should be able to vote. Now we can all sleep soundly at night. He thinks they should be able to vote. Does he want a medal? Like, it is insanity. And what is even crazier, somehow we got crazier than Pete Hegseth having to clarify that he thinks women should be able to vote, is the way in which it happened. The means by which this message was communicated in a screaming, angry, rageful meltdown at questions that we've been forced to be asked. Take a look. Pentagon aide rages when grilled on Hegseth's views on women like her voting. The DoD's Pete Hegseth's spokeswoman got testy when forced to answer questions over whether the defense secretary believed she and other women should be able to vote. Hegseth, known for his ultra-Christian views, last Friday shared a video of a pastor supporting repealing the 19th Amendment. When asked whether, in reposting the clip, it meant Hegseth agreed with the sentiment, his female Pentagon press secretary, Kingsley Wilson, gosh, that's a name, snapped, of course, the secretary thinks that women should have the right to vote. At Thursday's off-camera, on-the-record press briefing, Wilson faced a barrage over the repost and Hegseth's ties to Doug Wilson's church network. When a reporter asked if servicewomen and women generally should retain the right to vote, Wilson snapped, "That's a stupid question." Pressed on why, then, Hegseth would platform someone arguing to take the right away, she said the secretary very much appreciates many of Mr. Wilson's writings and teaching. She added, "I'm not going to litigate every single aspect of what he may or may not believe in a certain video." Despite her pushback, the Q&A continued to circle the same point. Did Hegseth disagree with the pastors? It is so funny that Pete Hegseth or Donald Trump can repost an outrageous video of a crazy extremist saying horrible things, and the right will then respond with, well, they're not endorsing everything that they said. But so often in right-wing media, you'll see views taken out of context and ascribed to our leaders. You'll see someone with maybe an opposing argument. They were upset with the Sydney Sweeney ad, right? Which is fine. You can be upset with the Sydney Sweeney ad. You can dislike it. But that doesn't mean that like the Democratic Party is actively writing legislation against the advertising of American Eagle. They always like to ascribe anything that they can find to the entirety of the Democratic Party, but not the views of Pete Hegseth to Pete Hegseth when they are difficult for him to deal with. And of course, female service members should be made uncomfortable by Pete Hegseth for a myriad of reasons, not just his resharing of this video. But the meltdown in response to it from his press aide is not the only meltdown that, of course, we've seen from Pete. But the one that I think is most pertinent, that I want to throw a little flashback to, is when James Tallarico, yes, the Texas representative and Democratic pastor, fought with Pete Hegseth on Fox over a very similar issue to what we're seeing today. And of course, Pete couldn't hang.
Pete, I just said I oppose voter ID. Currently, it's a law in Texas, but I oppose that law because I think you don't need it.
You oppose voter ID? You don't think the most sacred obligation of our republic, you should have to prove who you are in order to vote?
So there are a lot of Texans, actually hundreds of thousands, who don't have a driver's license, who don't drive at all.
Do they have a Social Security number? Because according to this Republican law, you can put your last 4 digits of your Social Security number in as proof of who you are. Did they not? No, help me out. Do those people not have Social Security numbers? And who are these people that can't get IDs?
So, Pete, if you're talking about the bill that we're currently focused on, not past Texas law, what this bill is going to do is not only reduce voting hours, it's also going to empower these partisan poll watchers who are going to look over voters' shoulders and prevent them from exercising their God-given right.
Partisan poll watchers, you mean the ones that weren't allowed in certain states at certain times in certain places, whether you agree with that or not? So Texas says maybe we should have partisan poll watchers on either side, Republicans and Democrats, right? It wouldn't just be Republicans.
Do you remember a second ago when I talked about the big lie? This is exactly what I'm talking about. And the reason that so many folks believe in this country is because folks like you get on television, James, every night and repeat the lie over and over again.
We're not talking about that. You just went on national television and said you don't want voter ID, revealing exactly what Democrats. And it's so condescending to say that people can't get identification. Have you found someone in your district that can't get identification?
You have made a lot of money personally, and you've enriched a lot of corporations with advertising by getting on here and spewing lies and conspiracy theories to folks who trust you. And so what I'm asking you to do is to tell your voters right now that Donald Trump lost the election in 2020.
At least you've resolved the lie that is Democrats are now for voter ID. It's not your show, sir, but at least you resolved the idea that Democrats are not for voter ID.
Did Donald Trump lose the election in 2020?
Real quick.
Can you answer the question? Did Donald Trump lose the election in 2020?
I'm answering questions. I'm not
don't really feel any obligation to answer anything
an uncomfortable
of you.
question for you?
No, it's...
See, this is Pete, the reason
my
I bring
question
this
is,
up
why are
because
you
this
in
lie-
Washington, D.C. and not in Texas when your job is in Texas? Because you know it's inevitable that this bill is going to pass. Eventually, you're going to have to pay your hotel bill and go back to Texas, and Governor Abbott will declare a special session. So you're being used by national Democrats to try to pass H.R. 1 to federalize elections, which you, as a Harvard grad, should know better, because the Constitution puts that in the hands of state legislators who are supposed to be in their state, and you happen to be in Washington, D.C. I don't understand how you square that circle.
I can answer. So based on the oath that I took for this office, I have to uphold the Constitution. I have to uphold our democratic system. And I, as a Texas Democrat, I'll tell you this, we lose a lot on the floor of the Texas House. We lose votes on abortion and guns and immigration.
Are you going to flee the state on those? Why is this number one? Is this the biggest?
That's how democracy is supposed to work.
All right.
The reason this is different,
we're going back.
The reason this is different is that they're trying to rig the rules of the game.
Oh,
we can debate
rig
issues.
the rules of the game.
We can debate issues,
asking
but we
people
cannot,
to prove who they are. Real quick, I'm going to end with this.
Democracy itself.
Your party's been obsessed with COVID standards, yet the CDC and the White House says you need to wear one on a plane. Why didn't you guys?
So all of us are fully vaccinated that got on the plane without a mask. Per CDC
if you're fully vaccinated, can I get on a plane then? Got
all
it.
we're trying to do
good.
is follow
as long
science,
as I know that you
is new
support
for
that
you.
if you're fully vaccinated, you get on a plane.
And after our former president, Donald Trump, started his big lie that the election was stolen, Republican legislators in capitals
Wait, how did you make this about Donald Trump in 20 seconds? That's a bit of a record. So now you're going to voter suppression, which I get it. But if this is all about your allegiance to Texas and you're an eighth-generation Texan and all that, and the Constitution, by the way, the Constitution, Section 1, Article 4, gives authority to the state legislatures, then why are you not in Texas? And why are you in Washington, D.C. doing press conferences with federal officials?
I was just going to answer that. It's a great question. And what I was saying is when President Trump lost the election, he told Republicans across the country that he didn't lose the election. And this caused Republican legislators in state capitals from Georgia to Austin to start putting forward bills that would make it harder to vote. And actually, Texas is one of the hardest places to vote in the whole country. And so when this started, many of my Democratic colleagues tried to negotiate with our fellow legislators, most of them Republicans, to try to make the bill less damaging, less harmful, less dangerous to constituencies across the state of Texas. Unfortunately, our Republican colleagues didn't want to negotiate with us, and they forced us to leave the state.
A few years later, and I guess Pete has turned down the bronzer. It's a little less bronzer on him. You can see more of his eyebrows, but not much better making his points. not much better at delivering a substantive argument. But I wouldn't expect anything else from a host at the Fox propaganda outlet. And we're going to continue to push back on that Fox host who should have stayed a Fox host. I really still can't believe he's our Secretary of Defense. But if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.